Yayo! Servant Sonic, back with you in your ears. It's so good to be back in your ears again. It's Lee in at least one of your ears, and in the other ear, it's Hunter.
Go check it. How we all doing? Good to be back.
How we all doing, exactly. And very, very special episode today. If you're tuning in on Twitch for the first time, thank you so much for tuning in. And if you're listening later in podcast format or on YouTube, also dope. But what we're really, really excited about is not Twitch. It's not YouTube. It's Jay Feelbender. Jay Feelbender, how are you? Thanks for joining the show today.
What's up? Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, right on. So Jay is a Toronto musician. He, in my opinion, really, really like sweats local Toronto, if I'm being honest, especially with this latest record. And I love that because Toronto is an awesome city, and it's such a musical and talented place. Jay, I know that we have a couple of songs from Enter the Mirror, which is your new EP that just dropped hot off the press Friday. But give us a quick 2-sentence, 3-sentence breakdown. What can we expect with this?
Well, first of all, I'm going to quote you on sweating Toronto. That's what the EP was made during the pandemic. I basically just kind of locked down with my brother-in-law, and he runs a studio called Marquee Sound. And we just we wanted to redo some of my older music, but once we got in the studio, I had a bunch of new tracks, and we were like, let's just do some new stuff. So kind of just locked in the studio for 10 days and just banged out a bunch of tracks, and that was kind of the end product.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, before we get too wild into this interview, let's jump right into one of the first songs here. So this was one of your singles that you released off of the record before it dropped this Friday. Mm-hmm. Any quick notes on Cheap Whiskey before we get into it?
It was actually the last song we recorded. I think we went back in after the first initial session, and I wrote that song, I think, after we had initially started recording. And I was like, I think we got to do this one too. So it was the final one we did. And then once we finished it, I was like, I think this has to be the first single. So it was yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay, well, let's get into Cheap Whiskey, and then we'll be back with Jay Feelbender after this. Enjoy.
Walking, kicking leaves, kicking rocks, no point stopping, sipping sweet on the rocks, alone in the city with a feeling, walking till I'm losing all my feelings, this might be my only way of dealing, walking till I'm losing all my feelings, there's no one else around, think I'm feeling free, there's no one in the city standing next to me, music on, rocks on, rocks off, feeling one way, feeling lost. Does anything mean anything at all? I keep walking, kicking lead, ticking rocks, no point stopping, sipping sweet on the rocks, alone in the city with a feeling, walking till I'm losing all my feelings, this might be my only way of dealing, walking till I'm losing all my feelings, there's no one else around, think I'm feeling free. There's no one in the city standing next to me. Music on, rocks on, feeling one way, feeling lost. Does anything mean anything at all? This life's totally busted, and I don't wanna waste my time any more than I did. And time, it keeps on moving, and I don't wanna waste your life any more than I have, yeah. Music on, rocks on,
There we go.
Can I just
Cheap
say,
whiskey.
Jay, that I love the music videos that you've put out. I will say
Thank
in that one that you're featured in like an inflatable ball. Was that seems like a very hot and sweaty experience? Was that?
that shit was crazy. It was like so it was so crazy hot in there. We did in the middle of the summer. So first of all, there's like obviously no ventilation.
Boy.
So it was just boiling hot. Also, weirdly enough, the zipper to like get in and out was only on the outside. So like, I'm not like I wouldn't usually
Like
consider
lock
myself-
you in there?
Yeah.
Oh
basically.
man.
My goodness.
So I wouldn't consider myself like claustrophobic usually by any means, but like being in there and knowing I couldn't get out unless someone like assisted me was a little bit sketchy. Especially being in like downtown Toronto, and I was like they were kind of shooting me from like across the street, like farther away, and I was like, I'm so vulnerable in this like
Oh man.
sweaty plastic ball.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was super fun. I really like the end product of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Right on, man.
So cheap whiskey, something I wanted to ask about this. You know, there's two ways to spell whiskey, one with an E, one without an E.
Yeah.
Did you deliberately hold the E off here?
I did. Because, so basically, I actually have some of my cheap whiskey right
Oh,
here.
There you
nice.
go.
There it is. He's prepared.
The good old Canadian Club. And Canadian whiskey is spelled without the E. It's just like
Right, you are.
yeah. So and
Yeah.
that was what I was drinking at the time, just Canadian Club, and so I was like, I'm doing the spelling of what I'm drinking. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, and one more reason to prove here that you sweat Toronto. Canadian Club, Bubble Boy moment
Exactly.
in downtown Toronto. Absolutely. Hunter, I know that you had a question specifically about the making of cheap whiskey as well.
Yeah. Well, Jay, I was asking because I know that a lot of the music you were writing was during the lockdown period in Toronto. And I guess, going for long walks in the midst of that height of that lockdown, were you kind of going to familiar neighborhoods for inspiration, or was it kind of just going anywhere around the city and kind of trying out new stuff?
Right before the pandemic started and the lockdown happened, I actually moved to a different part of the city with my girlfriend. And so for me, exploring that neighborhood was kind of new. But I'd go back and forth between like my parents who had been out of the city for like 2 years. I'd go to their place and walk around that area and kind of find new places. And then also the apartment with my girlfriend, walk around there too. So I was exploring I was trying to find new places as much as possible. There's all those memes about like going on my silly little mental health walk. And like, that was literally what I was doing every single day just to like escape and go away. So,
I I imagine you had to be like being cooped up in like a little apartment or what have you.
Very little apartment.
and I guess at the time, were you set to go on tour with Goodbye Honolulu?
Yeah, actually, right before
Oh man,
all went down, we were supposed to go to South by. I guess that was 2020, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a whole tour planned.
Wow.
That was, and going to the UK too, for a couple festivals, and yeah, it was all canceled.
Oh,
So
man.
yeah, there was also the kind of the expectation crash, and then everyone dealt with that, but yeah, it was like right when it started, we were supposed to leave. So
Right.
Oh jeez. Well, and I can't imagine because I've talked to like other people in bands or like artists where essentially the world stops and then you have to kind of like, what do we do now, kind of thing. Was that hard? I guess in the beginning, would you say that maybe? I guess what I'm trying to say. Was it kind of like you're sitting down and you're like, okay, what do we do now? Or was it kind of like getting into the writing song mode immediately for you? How did you kind of process? Because it's like, I remember I got laid off work and then I was like, oh, maybe 2 weeks, everything's going to be fine. And then it wasn't. And then 2 years later, here we are.
yeah, I mean, for Goodbye Honolulu, it was kind of a unique situation because we had just basically finished recording an album, like a full 13-song album, 12-song album that is out now. But we had finished I guess actually maybe 8 months before the pandemic started, we had finished that album. And then because obviously the world had just fell into this chaotic state, we were holding off on releasing it. So we really had that album and we're just sitting on it. So we weren't really in writing recording mode because we just had this full album. So it was a weird situation for Goodbye Honolulu. And then for me personally, I was kind of blessed to be able to record my solo stuff because it was hard to be in a band. It was hard to kind of get together, create stuff. Yeah. So it was kind of, and I found this for a lot of my friends too, it became the ideal time to be a solo artist rather than a band. I've seen a lot of bands kind of have to take breaks because it's just too hard to do stuff during the pandemic. But yeah, a lot of solo artists kind of found a way to thrive.
Yeah, I think so. With that in mind, do you have kind of like an idea of where you're going to go next? Then is it going to be more Jay Feelbender stuff? Are you excited to get back in the band atmosphere? Like, what's the next step you think?
Yeah, I hadn't like thought too much about live show just because it was so like obscure at that point, like kind of dangerous to think about. But now I'm definitely looking at like trying to figure out a live band for Jay Feelbender, and like I do want to tour this music and play it live for sure. So that's kind of at the forefront of my mind right now, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I have a bit of a goofy question about Cheap Whiskey. Then we can move on to some of the other bigger stuff with the album, or not bigger stuff, but other stuff with the album as well.
Yeah.
Cheap Whiskey goes best with A, cheap beer, B, Doritos, specifically Sweet Chili Heat, C, A Night in Kensington,
Oh shit.
or D, none of these things because it's a stupid list.
Or maybe like wings. What's your take, Jay?
Yeah.
I have been trying to be vegetarian for like 2 years, so
Can't be wings then. Yep.
yeah, can't be wings. But honestly, out of that list, love the list by the way. No shade to the list.
Thanks so much. That was honestly the question I was sweating the most.
Yeah.
So that's perfect.
Honestly, probably Kensington. I don't like go party in Kensington that often, but I do love walking to Kensington. And I do a lot of shopping there.
Totally.
And so some cheap whiskey sitting in that like sketchy little park in Kensington.
Super sketchy, terrifying little park. And you can do as many facelifts to that park as you want. I'm still scared of the park.
Yeah,
Never goes
Like,
away.
come on.
yeah. It's like it's character building.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the album then. So Enter the Mirror is the album.
Yeah,
And this is your third project as Jay Feelbender, is that right?
it is. Actually, I kind of forgot about that. Yeah, so Jay Feelbender, before that, I had a project called Headspace, and that was kind of my like solo music outlet. It was always for me kind of my like lo-fi bedroom, just my thoughts, and whenever I could record. And I didn't want to put too much like thought into the production. I mean, I did for myself, like creatively producing it, but not in terms of like making it be hi-fi. Like I kind of wanted it to be lo-fi. And that was kind of just like my creative outlet. And then eventually when I kind of wanted to evolve a little bit, I did Jay Feelbender. And I did 2 full albums as Jay Feelbender that were still in the same line, like of basically me just doing it all myself at home. The main name change, like reasoning behind the name change, was really just because Headspace was like unfindable on Google searches.
Because of the app or
Yeah, because of the app.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
It started actually with like a German metal band that had the name. And,
Oh, okay.
like, they were already doing pretty well, and then I just was like, oh, okay. So when you search Headspace, they would come up first. And I think even a couple times our music like fused on Spotify and stuff, and I was like, no.
Oh no, yeah.
brutal.
Yeah. And then the app came out, and I'm like, I fuck with the app. Can I swear on this podcast?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Swear away.
Go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, so I fuck
We're
with the
live
app.
in Kensington, swearing from the park.
Yeah.
Good app, but yeah, that definitely took over the search engine thing for Headspace.
Totally.
So yeah, at that point, then I like across the platforms it was on, I made it like Headspace in brackets Jacob Switzer just to like find it. But then I was like, okay, I gotta change the name. On my last Headspace album called Jacuzzi 23, I had like 2 songs, one called Casey Feelbender that was kind of about like becoming someone new and wanting to be someone new and this kind of like name change, and then a song called Karaoke Feelbender. And so both those titles kind of informed the name Jay Feelbender. And I was like, cool. That's like that. When you search Jay Feelbender, there is no one else. So that made it easy. And yeah, so I have 2 other projects under the Jay Feelbender name. And then I actually ended up clearing them off streaming platforms because for this new stuff, which is like my newest and the most hi-fi production that I did in studio, I just kind of want to start fresh on streaming platforms. It's still on my Bandcamp and it's still like in some kind of more obscure spots online. But yeah, I kind of wanted to just like fresh slate.
Yeah, because you got Big Bloom and Haze 11, right? Are the 2 other projects on Bandcamp there. So anyone listening, if you really want to get more Jay Feelbender, you can still go get that at Bandcamp.
Yeah, I love that stuff personally. Like I would love for people to listen to it. It's just like, yes, I just wanted to start fresh for the new stuff too.
Totally. Yeah. So let's talk about starting fresh. So with the album, me personally, I hear a lot of different sounds on this. I hear like golden age indie, like early 2000s. I hear some of the more like deliberately slow rock music of like the 1970s, 1980s as well. Is this like deliberate that you were going for something that was really like diverse in sound, or did it just kind of happen that way?
It's like super deliberate. It does, like, it is just the way I write music, because I really listen to a lot of different types of music, and I'm so inspired by different types of music. And then I hear something and I'm like, I want to do my take on that. I want to like do the best that I can to create something in this genre. So it is just kind of what I create, but it was also intentional because I find I'm a very like playlisty person. Like I'll listen to a full album when it comes out, and then I just inevitably pick my like 2-3 favorite songs and like create playlists with those songs. And sometimes I resent it because like I do also love and I respect people's vision on a whole album, but it's just the kind of listener I am. So I find I want to create like an album that has enough variation that people will hopefully want to listen to the whole thing without listening to a couple songs and being like, okay, I get it, and then like wanting to move on. You know what I mean? So
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Because yeah, no shade to that kind of music. Like again, I listen to lots of bands that were just like kind of the same type of music all the way through, and that's like totally valid. But at the same time, I also find myself sometimes just like picking and choosing from those albums because I'm just like, I don't need to hear maybe 15 songs with like the same vibe. You know what I mean? But that's just me.
Yeah.
For the creative process there, would you kind of maybe like listen to like a lot of maybe the playlist and then be like, okay, go do an instrument and pick it up and see what you come up with? Or is it kind of like, okay, like maybe listen to a bit of music, or maybe it's just silence one day and you pick up whatever and you just kind of go for it, would you say?
Like in terms of my songwriting process?
Sure, yeah. If you want to speak on that.
Yeah, it really does vary pretty often. Sometimes I'll just start with like a drum sample and then just see what happens with that. Sometimes I will have like lyrics written and I'm like trying to write something to the lyrics. That was what Cheap Whiskey was. Like I was literally on a walk drinking cheap whiskey, and I was like, I just wrote those lyrics out. And then when I got home, I was like, how can I get this to work? Because I almost kind of wrote it, specifically Cheap Whiskey, like with a bit of rap, hip hop influence in mind when I was writing the lyrics out. And then I knew when I got back, I was like, how can I kind of fit this into my world that I usually kind of make music in? So it kind of, in my mind, was a bit of a fusion. Not like I'm rapping or anything, but you know.
Yeah. It's like what was influencing you at the time.
Yeah.
Well, you talked about drum samples right there. Obviously, Toronto is known for a couple of major like producers that drop their own sample packs. I can think of the Count.
Yeah,
is kind of the big one.
Yeah.
When you go for a drum sample, is that like where you start? You go to like a pack, or do you kind of like rip it from other songs you really love, or what is it?
The Count, yeah, man.
The Count, eh?
His shit's awesome, and
so good. Yeah,
he's kind of he was one of the people I was thinking of when I was thinking about like kind of solo artists blowing up over the pandemic.
Totally.
He killed it. I mean, he also had the whole like visual format that he kind of created his beats in, which was super sick. But he has a bunch of drum packs, like you were saying. I use those a bunch, especially when I'm demoing, because it just like sounds solid, and I'm like, that inspires me. And then once I write something, then maybe I'll do some variations. But a lot of times, since I don't consider myself a drummer by any means, so usually I'll just take a drum loop, like loop it over and over again, and then just like figure out stuff to that. And then I'll like go back and like change it and add different drums so like the parts change up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely the Count. And then I also have like, I share a Splice account with my girlfriend, and like Splice has just like tons of, yeah. So I'm just like looking through there all the time too, trying to find drum samples. But
yeah, for sure. It's funny. Like I think like over the pandemic, the bedroom producer like just skyrocketed, right? In terms of people really doing that. And we would be stupid not to mention your girlfriend on the podcast too, Luna Lee.
Yeah.
She is also one of those. Yeah, totally. One of those Toronto artists that blew up during that pandemic, and doing some of that kind of like bedroom producing and putting it online, getting people excited about the work. Did you see what kind of like she was doing and people like Count and other people, and that really like inspired you to go and do that thing, or did that not really play a factor at all?
I mean, I was always I wasn't like making the videos and stuff like that, but just like we both kind of were making music before we met, but we've been together for like 7 years, almost 8 actually. But so we kind of started doing the like home recording stuff a lot together. We both did it separately ahead of time, but when we got together, we were like both just kind of doing that together too. So I mean, yeah, it's always been what we've been up to, but seeing them do the kind of like live video, jam production thing is like super cool. I know I can't do that. Like I'm not like I am just simply not multi-talented enough of an instrumentalist to like create something that would be so in the same vein. So I've tried to do things that are kind of in my own way of that. Like a lot of artists are now kind of doing that format of like
Totally. Yep.
edited together live kind of jam video things. So I've done some of that stuff on my Instagram, and because I kind of first and foremost consider myself a songwriter more than like I don't whatever. If someone's like, "Are you like a guitarist or whatever?" It's like I don't really consider myself to be like a guitar player. I just like I'm a songwriter. So for my sort of thing, I just like write songs and basically just will post like a minute long like quick song I thought of that day versus it being kind of like a instrumental production thing.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool.
In terms of the recording process, Jay, you mentioned, of course, with your brother-in-law, and I don't know if you've seen the Beatles documentary, the Get Back doc, where it's like where they're trying to design the album, and they basically lock themselves in a studio. And I can't imagine kind of like there's a point where you get really burnt out. It's like maybe we should break and get some air. Right. How was but I remember reading something where you guys would essentially wake up, go to work, and record for how much long? How was that process for you? Did you really enjoy it? Would you want to do it again?
Yeah, that's like my ideal, honestly.
Yeah,
I always have trouble like creating something and then coming back to it. Like that, I always like to just kind of get stuff done. So, I mean, I will, like I've done that plenty of times, but the ideal thing for me is almost just like slamming it out, moving on. And then we can obviously we'd go back and add parts to the songs, but we basically would like sit down, get like 80% of a song done, and then like move on and just get a bunch of tracks out and then kind of revisit them and just like add the things we wanted to. And then obviously the mixing and stuff like that. But yeah, that's like my favorite way to do it, honestly. And I was like sleeping over there. It was literally just like do it, go to sleep, wake up, start recording again. We'd have like also since we're like close, obviously we just like had lunch breaks or we just like watch some TV for a bit and like make some food. And so it was super chill and I would definitely do it again. Yeah.
Well, you come from like a super artistic family, right? So I mean, mention the brother, but any other like major within specifically your family inspirations or people who really push you along?
Totally. Also, I'll just mention about Braden, who's my brother-in-law, who runs Marquee Sound. The connection also is that he actually was like him and Cole went to high school together, and
cool.
So they were like he was involved in some of Cole's sample packs.
Very cool.
How I know we all went to the same high school, but they were older than me.
Cole being the Count for people.
Yes, the Count. Yeah. So they made some of those things together. So that's how I know him. And then obviously Hannah kind of got in touch with them. And then Hannah knows Braden through me. And so Braden also produced Luna Lee's album.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
like the most kind of, like Duality?
Yeah, Duality. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's all kind of like in the family.
Yeah, definitely.
And the Toronto scene just gets smaller and smaller as you kind of like meet people, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, my mom is a filmmaker who like kind of an indie filmmaker who from Canada, who basically shot she didn't shoot it, but she directed my Big Game video, which was the latest single before the EP came out.
Right.
And my dad is a producer and musician who played in a bunch of bands when I was growing up. I would like go on kind of festival tours with him. And so definitely super like artistic household. And that was like obviously inspiring growing up.
Totally. Yeah. Well, you mentioned Big Game, so we should bring it up here. But Big Game, huge moment last night, hockey night in Canada.
Yeah, man. Hell
Big Game gets played during the broadcast. Big Game being the song, not the actual game itself, but it works. It's a perfect marriage. But what's that like? I mean, how many ever TVs that must have been heard on across the country? Like, how does that feel?
Was that a surreal moment?
Yeah, I didn't see it. But it was surreal to hear about it. And also it kind of made sense to me because I didn't think about it when I was making the song, but as soon as we finished it, I was like, it's totally like a kind of like, I always envisioned it in like an action sequence, especially to break down the like kind of like instrumental chorus. I was like, oh, this would be perfect for like a chase scene or sports. I mean, the title of it's Big Game. So when I heard that, I was like, oh yeah. And I don't know what part they use, but I'm assuming it's the instrumental breakdown. So totally. I just feel like that's perfect for that. So yeah, for me, I was like, damn, nice. I'm glad that someone like kind of heard that and was like, yeah, thought the same thing I was. And yeah, it's super cool. I mean, I grew up watching hockey with my dad and stuff like that. So to have my music on it is just like kind of surreal for sure. Yeah, super cool.
I can see a lot of skateboarders using Big Game.
Yeah, right.
Track. I can see a lot of like montages with skateboarders. I'm like,
Yeah, the
this
white
slaps.
flags.
This is good.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, totally.
You-
I gotta reach out to some skateboarders. You know what I mean? Just be like,
Yeah.
come on.
Oh, dude,
Yeah,
totally.
fuck the Leafs.
Yeah,
Get some
Yeah.
skateboarders.
Get some damn skateboarders up
Yeah.
in here. Yeah.
exactly.
No, totally. So you mentioned how your mom plays a big part in your music videos, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you want to kind of investigate for yourself? Like, do you want to do like scores for a film, or do you want to kind of express some of that visual art as well? Or is that something that you've never really had an interest in, or
Or maybe
Yeah, I
getting
mean-
into it now.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because that's what I've always been interested in growing up, probably because my parents did that. But like film and music were both kind of my main outlets. I was an actor for a long time growing up. And then I made a film like with my friend in grade 8. And I was kind of into film before music, actually, really. And then for Goodbye Honolulu, we kind of always like we have our close friends who we work with for a lot of the videos, and they were like the directors, but we all kind of like we're always very heavily involved with all the Goodbye Honolulu videos too. And the You Got It video I directed with Emmett from the band as well. And so yeah, we've always kind of like been super interested in definitely the visual aspect of like what you release. It's so important nowadays, especially with music, to have like an accompanying visual, or just like at least an idea of what you want the visuals to be. And like basically an aesthetic is super important, I think, nowadays.
like a brand?
Yeah. So definitely involved in that, and definitely like always thinking about that for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have like an original soundtrack or like the score of a film or something like that you really like find super inspiring, or
Yeah.
That's a good question. Not like off the top of my head, honestly. But what was what TV show was it? Like I think Destroyer, that band Destroyer is a Canadian band, did like I'm not sure if they did the whole soundtrack. It was a Netflix TV show. I think it was 13 Reasons Why, maybe.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Right.
And I don't know if maybe he did the whole soundtrack, or if there was just like this very iconic song that he did that was maybe like the like outro to the. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I remember hearing that and I was like, this is just so like. Anyone who heard that, I bet tons of people looked up what song that was. And like when I went to the Spotify, it was like that was the top song, I'm sure, because people were like, this is just so iconic in this moment. So I feel like for me, sync just feels so important. Like, first of all, music makes films a lot of the time. Or another good example is the Batman.
Right.
Have you seen the new Batman?
Totally. I was
I
just
haven't
about to
yet.
say.
Oh,
I was
dude, I
just about
haven't
to
yet.
say, yeah, like how much audio can make a scene, can make a film even. Yeah.
And I was on like one of the big Spotify playlists looking at I think it was like Lorem or whatever, one of the ones like the hip Spotify playlists. And Something in the Way was like before I saw the Batman, and it was like 4th on the playlist, and I was like, why is like Nirvana back on this like fucking
Yeah.
hip Spotify playlist? Like obviously that's not like they're, you know, unknown by any means, but just like I was like, oh, interesting that they're here. And then when I saw Batman, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
right.
Play center stage for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just funny how much attention that can bring to a song, or even like, you know, the intro song to the OC or Friends or any of those things where like in some ways it can be a bit scary because then that becomes like your song, your only big song.
Sure.
It's like it can be a dangerous thing to become a one-hit wonder from that kind of thing. But at the same time, there's a lot of money in it. If you kind of like trying to make a living off music, a lot of it comes from the sync world. And then also it's just cool if you can really find that good like appropriate spot for your music. So I'm super interested in like sync. I did a sync licensing course last summer, and like I'm interested in both sides of it. I love finding music, so like just like listening and finding new music that could go in film is like super cool to me, as well as obviously making it.
Right. Very cool.
Well, and speaking of, I mean, we're all probably kids of the '90s, right? So the golden age of television theme tracks, or you know, what have you.
I always think of the "You're not the boss of me now." The Malcolm in the Middle. Like that's
iconic,
yeah,
class,
iconic.
yeah.
Totally. So before we get into the next track here, and we're going to get into Blonde October in just a sec, but on Big Bloom, again, one of the earlier projects that you have still on your Bandcamp, there's a song with Luna Lee on there. Will we ever get a full Luna Lee, Jay Feelbender collab record to blow Toronto's mind?
I mean, I don't have like a team, so no one's told me not to say this, but I guess I'll just say,
Whoa.
I'll just say something's coming up.
Oh, you heard it here first.
Serving Sonic, guys. This is why you got to tune in. This is why you got to tune in. We get the juicy bits.
Yes, indeed.
Awesome. And and again, I do just want to kind of touch on something that's really awesome that happened in her life as well, and how that potentially you could be right on the cusp of something similar. I know that they just went on tour, Luna Lee did, with Japanese Breakfast. Saw a bunch of stuff about how influential Japanese Breakfast is to the good. Luna Lee output, and I mean, a bunch of different reasons for that. Is there someone like that for you? Like, is there someone that's like, oh, like in this current like touring climate, this would be the person that would just be the perfect situation for me to go on tour with? Or have you not really put any thought into that?
That's a good question, and I should have an answer for that so that I can like be like pitching that. Honestly, I've always, people want, like, whenever people ask me like who's your favorite artist of all time, I've always struggled with that because I so quickly shift through who I'm listening to, and there are bands that like inspire me and musicians that inspire me, but it tends to be kind of fleeting, and I get very inspired for like kind of shorter periods of time, and then kind of like, it's not like I move on and I'm like, oh, I don't like that band anymore. It's just like I don't have like something in my mind. Some people are like, oh, favorite band of all time, easily this band. And for me, I've never really like had that.
Sure.
So it's hard to say. And then I've been kind of like speaking earlier about the variation of the album and the EP for my music. That kind of like, I've been thinking about it recently, and I was like kind of getting freaked out because I was like, is it going to be hard to like open for a band because the music is so kind of like different where it won't necessarily fit exactly with the band? You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
like
for sure. Yeah.
There's certain songs where it's like, oh, this is kind of like a rocky song, so maybe that could go on like tour with a rock kind of band thing. But then would this song kind of not fit it because it's like slower and chill and acoustic? And then this other one that's a bit more like hip hoppy, like, is that going to be weird for the audience? But you know, whatever.
Yeah, totally. I think that with stuff opening up, people are just going to be super hungry to see shows in general. Yeah. And we got to get Jay Feelbender on the stage performing the hits. That's what we need.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, why don't we jump into Blonde October, and then when we come back, we can dive in a little bit more about the record that you brought with us, or with you here for us today. And a little bit more about Enter the Mirror. So this is Blonde October, Jay Feelbender off of Enter the Mirror.
Let's go.
Every day just feels so damaging. Need a bigger suitcase, fit my baggage in. Every day you're always on my mind, always on my mind. You're always on my mind, but I'll be fine, I'll be fine. Every day I'm fitting all your scams in. I need a way longer life to fit my plans in. I guess you'll always be fine. You'll always be fine. You'll always be fine. And always on my mind. You're always on my mind. You were blonde in October, young, but now we're older, and we're still drinking in the dark and doing drugs late in the Every week, every year, just vanishing. Every love's the same, different packaging. Every day you're always on my mind, always on my mind. You're always on my mind, and I'll be fine, I'll be fine. steady doing damage. Either way, I knew you would always manage. I guess you'll always be fine. You'll always be fine. You'll always be fine. You're always on my mind. You're always on my mind. You were born in October young, but now we're older and we're still drinking in the dark and doing drugs late in the
Boom. There we go.
Now, Jay, I gotta say, I saw the PS, forgive me, PlayStation. That's a PlayStation 1 on the cover there, right?
Yeah.
Hell yeah, man. I feel like that's a nod to the 90s, maybe, but...
Oh, for sure.
Hell yeah. Out of interest, top games on the PlayStation 1?
Spyro was
hell yeah.
like my OG.
Haven't heard that in
Yeah.
a long
Dude,
time.
fuck
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that was
Wow.
like speaking of like going on tour with my dad when he was playing like folk festivals and stuff when I was a young kid. Back in hotels, remember they used to have like you could rent like game system at hotels and they'd
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And so they'd have like PS1, and I remember like every so often, every couple hotels, my dad would be like, "Okay, we can like rent the PS1." And they'd always
Hell
have
yeah.
Spyro. So I remember just like with my dad playing Spyro, and yeah, I guess it'd probably like the same first 4 levels every time because you're not saving the game.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The demo
Yeah.
version.
Yeah. So yeah, that was definitely like the OG stuff for me. I still got my PS1. I still got a bunch of games for it actually. But it was funny thinking about the album cover. My friend who made that over in Russia, she North X Carolina, by the way, if anyone wants to check out their art on Instagram, super cool.
Very cool.
But yeah, we talked a bit about what we wanted to have on the cover and like definitely the idea behind it. But I think they just thought about the like what items are like, oh, like video. I think they're like, I like video games, I like comics, I like these kind of things.
Right.
Hell yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
And then when I was looking at it after I released it, I was like kind of realizing that it actually kind of has a nod to like my older music, which was super cool. And I kind of only realized afterwards. So I might make a post like kind of highlighting that. But like the PlayStation for one of the older Headspace things, I think it was actually on Jacuzzi 23, the Headspace album I released, my final Headspace album. All the interludes on that album are like a PlayStation starting up, a GameCube starting up,
Oh,
and
Yes.
like a PlayStation 2, kind of like the intro, and those like little lights are like circling around.
oh,
Yeah.
the GameCube one is hilarious.
Dude, the GameCube one's iconic.
like, oh,
So
good.
that one
Hell yeah.
for the GameCube one, it's like a interlude, and it literally like does the GameCube sound like
Yeah.
and then when it like lands, it drops into like a synth chord.
Oh,
Oh,
So yeah, you guys
I
should
love
check
it.
that
I
out.
love it.
yeah. Where can the people get that?
Dude.
It's actually it's on Bandcamp, and it should just be Headspace in brackets Jacob Switzer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gosh,
Gotta
I
get our
think
hands on that.
just that final Jacuzzi 23 is on Spotify too, actually.
Okay.
All the older Headspace stuff is just on Bandcamp, but that one is on Spotify as well. So yeah, the interludes of that, and then the like plastic bag that's like a convenience store bag. I have an older Headspace album called Seeds, and like I'm kind of sitting in front of this convenience store, and I got the idea for Seeds because there was just this big sign that said like Seeds. So that's where that came from. So that was kind of a callback to that. And then the smiley face on it, like another Headspace album called Sad Sad Summer has me with this kind of like smiley face turned upside down, which is like the same kind of logo. And then the picture she used, or that they used for me sitting on that stool, and like the way I'm sitting is from a picture that someone took during the Haze 11 Dancing Under the Blue Light video. So it just was like all little pieces from it that I hadn't even thought of ahead of time, but all those pieces were kind of like from older music of mine. So I was like, this is just full circle. So I was kind of stoked on that.
Yeah. Did you give any direction on that, or is that just something that was done?
Yeah, we were going back and
by-
forth about just like what the idea of it was going to be. And I think they had another piece of art that they had done where it was like, I think it was like two people kind of making out on this like desert, like kind of planet, empty planet. And I was like, oh, I really like that kind of like space, empty planet. I think it was more of like a wasteland in that one.
Right.
And I was like, I love that kind of like desolate vibe, especially for this album, which was all like about kind of the pandemic and all that stuff. So I think we kind of like went back and forth on that. And then I was talking about like having a couple of things on the planet. And
Right.
I think we just kind of agreed on like, oh yeah, I like video games and comics, and like this plastic bag I think had appeared in a few of their other artworks. And then one of my favorite details is also like, and this was just them doing it, but like there's like a few tears on my eye, they're like floating. Because, like, they're in space.
Oh yeah.
Very cool.
And that little detail I was like thought that was super cool. So
Yeah, that's sweet. So we got your favorite video game from that era. Do you have like
Yeah.
a favorite comic that really set you off when you started?
I used to subscribe to this magazine when I was a kid called Shonen Jump, and it's like a manga compilation comic that like it's like serialized in Japan. I don't know how I even heard about that when I was a kid, but they would like I would get it mailed to my house every month, and so that was like my OG shit when I was like in grade school. It had like Naruto and like Dragon Ball Z and just all that kind of like classic.
All the classic stuff.
Yeah. So that was kind of what I was. I mean, I also just read the like, the like Spider-Mans and Batmans and stuff, but like that was kind of what, at that point I was like, this is awesome.
So, are you still a comic book person? Like you still go and grab?
Yeah,
a
do you
book
still
and read
read? Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I'm like very caught up on all things comics.
There you go. Awesome. Well, what I want to do is give you an opportunity to go a little bit into the album that you brought for us.
Mm-hmm.
So for people who do not know, this next segment is called Spicy Staple. What it's all about is talking about albums that are important to us. Now, usually when it's Hunter or myself or Jake, we bring an album to the forefront that we think really deserves some attention and, has been around for a while. But you actually brought one that is relatively new. You got Dijon here with Absolutely. I believe this was released just last year.
Yeah.
Dijon from LA. What do you want to say about Dijon, and why is it such a big one for you?
I would say definitely my favorite album of 2021. I did like kind of a little breakdown at the end of the year, my top 10 albums of 2021. And that was just like, when I was thinking about it, I was like, it's gotta be Absolutely. It just like feels kind of in some senses like the perfect album to me. Kind of like I was saying earlier about like finding inspiration from people, and it tends to kind of like shift fairly quickly. This one was definitely my like infatuation right now. And I don't think it'll change anytime soon. I mean, I've been listening to like Talk Down, specifically that track, like pretty much every single day.
Right.
Such a banger. But it just has, it has one of the best kind of like displays of heartbreak that I've heard lately. So much music is about like love and heartbreak, and I don't know like exactly what Dijon is talking about in this album, but you can feel the emotion behind it.
Totally.
And it definitely feels like a heartbreak album. And like it's just done in such a powerful way. Some of the lyrics, I'm just like, it's just like so raw. I think that'd be a good way to describe it. It's just like raw. It's raw as hell. It also goes across like a bunch of different, not like genres, like it still fits in the same kind of world, but like The Dress is like just an R&B like hit.
Totally.
Banger. And then like it goes like Many Times is kind of just like this raw, like almost kind of spoken word, like rappy kind of thing over just a hype beat. And then Talk Down is super cool. And then Rodeo Clown is just like one of the, like just the most heartbreaking songs. It's so good. I'll just put that on and be like, wow.
Oh man. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just like super good. And then so just like all across, it just feels like kind of a perfect album. And also Mickey, who's like another really cool artist, helped produce a bunch of the songs with Dijon. And his music is super cool. And the thing that really brought me into this album was the live session they did. And it was basically, it's just called the Absolutely like film, I think. It's on YouTube now. It was there for a bit and they pulled it down and they put it back up. And it's like a 22-minute or something, just like live session of like maybe 4 or 5 of the songs that they play in this kind of like room. And then it turns out it's like a set. and it's just this like set of a room, like on a film studio set, I imagine, and it's just like so raw and so good. It feels like they just like were in a room drinking and playing this EP or album or 5 songs or whatever, and just like doing it over and over again. His voice gets super raw, the emotion gets wild, and it's just like seeing that, I was like just blown away by it. And then listening to the album, it was just like a treat after that.
Totally. Yeah. I think you get notes of, with Dijon, especially on this album, you get notes of like Frank Ocean a little bit. You get notes of like Daniel Caesar almost a little bit as well. And it's what you're saying, like with the R&B influence, definitely you hear that. But like Frank Ocean, like Daniel Caesar, there's the kind of wandering into other genres. And I say wandering because it's like, it kind of like seeps out, if that makes sense, like from song to song. It's not as stark. It's not like one song is just this, one song is just that. It kind of bleeds in together. And I kind of feel the same way a little bit about Enter the Mirror, right? Where you can see the transitions, even a bridge or something like that, kind of take you into a new place. Even if it's just for a split second, even if it's just for a couple moments. And yeah, I wonder, is that something that, is maybe not necessarily deliberate, but something that you have noticed about your own work and about work that you admire?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I appreciate that. Thank you. And I mean, Frank Ocean also is like a huge inspiration to me. I would say Blonde is one of like my favorite albums of all time.
Sure.
Which is not like a unique opinion, but it's just like completely valid. Like it's like anyone who says that, I'm just like, yeah, true.
Yep.
It's like you can't really like,
yep.
Like I feel like most albums that people are like best album of all time, it's like everyone's gonna be like, oh well, come on. But like Blonde is like pretty much universally accepted.
Yeah.
It's so funny though, because it didn't start that way, right?
True.
Like the first week of that release, I remember people being like, this isn't Channel Orange 2. Like, what's going on here? But I 100% agree with you. I think that people now see that album as like super influential to where music's gone.
Yeah.
Like such a key piece of Frank Ocean's career, obviously, but other people's careers as well.
There was
That's
a lot
a
of
good point.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, because people at first were just like, this is like weird. Like this isn't what we expected. And like what, it's not like immediately catchy. As soon as you kind of like get into it, it's like, oh, this is really, really catchy. And there's songs that like people know all the words to, obviously.
Sure.
But yeah, when I first heard it too, I was like, Night stood out to me. But then a lot of other songs that kind of took me a while to get into. And now it's like front to back. But yeah, that's a good point. And then now I hear so many artists where I'm like, oh, this is inspired by Frank Ocean. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just like makes sense. But there's things where I'm like, oh, this is like you were listening to Frank Ocean and you're like, I want to make it that. Which is really bad. I mean, Blonde October is called Blonde October because I was listening to Blonde and
oh man.
And it was October.
Yeah.
There you go.
And a bit more. There's a bit more involved there too. But like yeah, like that definitely Frank Ocean's just the shit too.
Well, I remember the exposure for that album. I remember, is it Nice? My memory escapes me, but it was like that beat switch halfway through one of the songs, and there's like a million compilations of people going like, "Oh, what's this now?" And that was my exposure. Yeah. Then I'm like, "Oh, I got to check this out." So yeah,
I think that was Nights. Yeah, I think he tends to do that kind of thing, but I think Nights was the big like weird kind of like riffage into the slow down, then it kind of transforms into this other song. Yeah, so good.
Totally, yeah.
But yeah, sorry, I don't know if I answered your question. Basically,
no, definitely, yeah.
I like love that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of people realize that like there's no, obviously this has been happening forever, but people kind of fall back in and out, and we as a society fall back in and out of this kind of like structure of songs that it needs to be. Yeah. And for Frank Ocean, who like was so huge and only got huger after that, to have this album that was like quite experimental and like have these kind of weird bridges where like didn't necessarily at all follow a structure of a song that you'd think would be like on the radio or like universally loved, was like just was groundbreaking. And also a lot of the songs, like if there was drums in them, would just have a completely different vibe. But it's like he made this choice to like pull drums out of songs where you're just like, or I don't know if they're ever there, but like not have drums in songs where you're just like, whoa, this is like a 4-minute song, this like weird ballady thing that could have easily had some like super sick drum loop in it, but just obviously chose to not do that. And I remember like one of the first criticisms that I always heard when I was like first starting making music, because I didn't have access to like drums. People always like, dude needs drums. Like, can't have music. Like, you gotta have some drums. Can't sound like guitars. And like, so for him to do that and the song still be so catchy and so good, and like just not have that, I was like, fuck you guys. Look at that.
Yeah, I think of like when you first said like, you know, pull the drums or whatever. I think of Solo. Yeah, like off of Blonde, and I'm 100%. And I think that's an interesting point of you know, trying to obviously challenge yourself as a songwriter, challenge yourself in the studio or whenever you're making a product to really push yourself. But the other thing I think that is a part of that, and this is something that I think Frank Ocean maybe does at just like an elite level that it's hard to even pinpoint another person, is just strip down, like completely like isolated sounds, and how that can really bring out the, you know, other areas of the album, of the other areas of the project, but it just like fully makes you focus on that singular moment right there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like the taking away of different things that you expect to be there almost makes you like lean in and listen even closer. You know?
And to bring it back to Dijon, I feel like that song, Rodeo Clown, is like that kind of thing where I kind of felt like I heard a bit of maybe Frank Ocean influence.
Sure.
But it's so raw and so pared back that it was almost like in that world, but just like even more so. It was like inspired by that, and then being like, but what if we just take away everything? And it's all about this just like raw vocal take and like the emotion behind what I'm saying, you know? So yeah, I mean, that album super sick. I've been telling everyone about it, and like everyone's like, oh, if anyone ever asks like, what are you listening to lately? I'm just like, Dijon, absolutely.
Hell yeah.
Listen to it. And definitely if anyone's listening to this, go watch the like short film on YouTube too. It's just like super, super cool.
Totally. Well, let's get right into it then. So this is The Dress by Dijon, Jay Feelbender's spicy staple. Let's enjoy it.
Do you still take a long time to get ready? 'Cause you used to make too much out of that kind of stuff. Then you turn your head around and it kills. 'Cause the dress looks nice on you still, and it always will. I wait a long time just to see. I'm happy to be catching up. No, we don't have to patch things up. Just turn the lights down. Thrill. 'Cause the dress looks nice on you still, and it always will. We should go out and dance like we used to dance. We should go out in old hands, lovers old hands, and I can't tell you who's gonna last. Well, maybe that's a question, an answer I don't have. Okay, I took a long time to get ready to, 'cause I didn't remember it, and my head got heavy like it tends to do. And I know that ain't part of the deal, but the dress looks nice on you still, and it always will. I hated myself for some time, for the things that I said, the things that I put in your head. And I tried and I tried and I failed, but the dress looks nice on you still, and it always will. So we should go out and dance like we used to dance. We should go out in old hands, lovers old hands, and I can't tell you who's gonna last. Well, maybe that's a question, an answer I don't have. Well, maybe that's a question, an answer I don't have. We should go out and dance like we used to dance. We should go out in old hands, lovers old hands, and I can't tell you who's gonna last. Well, maybe that's
There you go, Dijon, the dress. I think it's pretty clear. You got to go on tour with Dijon.
Dude,
That's the
sexy.
answer.
That's
Yeah.
a sexy
That's
song.
the
right there.
answer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a hot song.
Dude, holy.
I would love to. You know what? Yeah, that could kind of work, honestly. Like, cause he got the sexy songs and he got some like kind of more upbeat shit too. That'd be gnarly.
Okay, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna do.
Manifesting
Yeah, exactly. We're doing a Servant Sonic presents in the creepy, scary park in
the park?
Kensington.
Yep.
Jay Feelbender and Dijon.
Love it.
I'd go. Yeah, done.
100%.
Who says no? Who says no?
May, I think. Yeah. No one's saying fucking no.
Yeah.
We'll just like after his show in Toronto, we'll just be like, "Yo, we know this park. Come
Dude.
on out."
Yeah,
You are
come
gonna
on.
love it.
Yeah, you're gonna love this.
You are gonna love this place.
Handed like
Oh.
an acoustic guitar and just like, be like let's go.
Yeah,
Dude,
You got
totally.
some cheap
Yeah.
whiskey over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just gonna give the whole experience, the Jay Feelbender experience for Dijon here in Toronto.
I think we're onto something.
Yeah, definitely. Well, very, very dope. Love that track. Great album. Again, go check that out as well. That is Dijon's absolutely released, I think November, I want to say.
Yeah,
That sound right?
But it was like
think-
fairly late in the.
Yeah, I think it was late last year.
Late in
I
the
want to
year?
say November. Yeah. But anyways, released last year. Awesome. You can definitely hear some of the influence in your work in there as well, and definitely some of the notes in there. But awesome. Thank you so much for bringing that to us
Yeah,
and to
of
the
course.
listeners and to the people who are hungry to get more new cool music. So
Yeah, my spicy staple.
the spicy staple, the spiciest of
Yeah.
staples, like a sweet
So-
chili heat Dorito, you may
Yeah,
say.
there you go.
Very much so. And Jay, on the first spicy staples, we usually give ratings. Is this a 10 for you? It's a straight 10?
Yeah, you know what? I'll go straight 10. Yeah.
Yeah.
Easy.
There's no like,
Easy 10.
yeah, there's no like issues that I see with it. So
We have
no bad
literally
criticisms.
no problem giving
Yeah.
out 10s on the show.
No. Oh, yeah, we give a
we're
bunch of
handing
them.
out 10s.
I
10
like
for
that.
you. 10 for you.
yeah, I'm with that
Yeah.
too. Honestly, like fuck, like raining on people's parade. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
10.
Like people judging. I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't feel
yeah.
equipped to judge art.
Yeah.
It's like, what do I say about it? You know?
Literally.
I'm
yeah.
like, you made that. So
Yeah,
Sure.
definitely.
Yeah.
The other thing too is I'm really easily like convinced that I'm just wrong. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like if I'm like that, yeah, like that's a good album. That's an 8 out of 10 for me. And Hunter's like, well, it's a 10 for me. And I'm like,
me too.
it's a 10. You know
Yeah,
what?
yeah, yeah.
After you said it out loud, I think
Well, I'm
I
like-
think it's a 10.
And like going off Lee's point, I'm like, who am I to say anything?
Yeah,
who am I
yeah.
to like judge their music of something like vulnerable that they
Yeah, yeah.
created? You know what I mean? So-
Totally. I'm always on the same. I'm like that too. 100%.
Well, actually, Jay, I was curious, what's been the reception for your music? Have people come and talk to you about it, or is it still relatively new?
Yeah, I mean it's very fresh, but it was awesome just like hearing people's. This music as well. I'd also been sitting on for like almost 2 years now, I guess, because we recorded
Wow.
it within
Yeah.
the first little bit of the pandemic. In the first like few months, I guess it was like I think we started recording in like March. Yeah, so like the first like 3 months of the pandemic, we started recording it. So yeah, I've been sitting on it for quite a while. I just wanted to kind of release it in a way I felt was like appropriate and that it could get hopefully some attention. So it's been great, and it just felt like kind of the biggest thing was just like finally having it out in the world. You know what I mean? It's such a
Yeah,
such a like a singles game right now, like releasing singles, that it just feels like so long to release the music you want to release, and like so many times I'd be like, should I just drop this? But then I'd be like, nah, I gotta play the game.
Right.
I think I would love to reach a point where I don't have to play the game, but like when you're kind of at the level that I am, I think it is important to kind of like
Build the
not
hype.
overstep,
Yeah.
not like overstep yourself and be like, but I'm an artist and like I can do whatever I want. And it's like you can,
Yeah.
but maybe no one will hear it.
yeah, fair
fair
enough.
Is that
So,
like hard though? Like, you know, like sitting on music that like, do you
Yeah.
ever get like, do you walk away from it once it's released being less excited about it, or
yeah, it's always a
or
weird
is it
thing.
just like that rush when you still release it?
Yeah, it is a bit of like once it's out, you're kind of like, well, that's it, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
and then that's when like touring comes
Yeah.
in, because then you're like, oh, now I get to play it for people and like get new
Right.
reactions, and you kind of play it different ways every time you play it live and whatever, right? So that's kind of what brings the longevity to a release.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a weird thing to release music into the world, and I don't know. I guess that was the thing with my solo music originally was my outlet to basically be like, I'm just gonna drop this now. Like there's no repercussions.
Yeah.
And it was purely my creative outlet to just like put it out and be like, cool, listen to this if you want. It was kind of just for me to create and like what I want to do with my time, and I hope you like it. But now with this new stuff, I do want people to hear it, and I do want it to like get the respect that I think it deserves. So like,
sure,
I'm definitely trying to do it properly.
Yeah. Well, if it's any comfort to you, Servant Sonic is giving it a 10. All right, we're giving it a 10.
It's fucking good.
That would be sad if after we said that, we give 10s out. We give 10s out, no problem. But this is like an 8 for us.
We're handing out 10s. Not for you. We're not handing out 10s for you, but we're handing out 10. No, it's
oh, dude, yeah.
It's a great EP, man, and it really is. It's a breath of fresh air too, with the stuff that we've gone through the last 2 years here in this music. Seeing obviously you get to release this is awesome too. I know it's been tough for artists. I am a little disappointed in one thing though. We mentioned Kurt Cobain earlier in the show with Nirvana, obviously in the Batman soundtrack. We don't have the Kurt Cobain glasses though that you're so famous for. I'm pretty. I'm pretty bummed personally.
Have them right with me to show them off.
Oh, you mean these?
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a 10.
Exactly.
That would
have been the move. I had the cheap whiskey with me, but I didn't bring the glass.
Oh, hey, 1 out of 2 ain't bad.
Yeah.
1 out of 2. Yeah.
1 out of 2 ain't bad. Well, we'll give you the floor for the last say so on whatever you want to say about Enter the Mirror or anything else. What should people know about Jay Feelbender, and where should they go listen?
I guess I would say, go listen anywhere you can stream music. It should be everywhere, or my Bandcamp if you want to go there. Also, I don't think I really talked about this. People who like know, but when I did the session with Braden, we actually did 12 songs. So I have another EP ready to go. So Enter the Mirror is just step 1 in the 2-parter. So more music coming soon.
Nice. When can people expect that? This year, later on?
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely planning to drop probably the next single. I don't want to wait too long, so I don't put a time limit on it, but probably like within the next few months.
Wow, there you go, folks.
Right on.
Yeah, very exciting. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us for the episode today. It was awesome to get to chat with you and hear about the experiences with Enter the Mirror, and we'll have to have you back, and we'll also have to catch that live show that we're definitely having
man.
with Dijon.
Hope to see you live in Toronto.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, taking us out, let's listen to my personal favorite song, and I know Hunter strong affinity for it as well.
I guess I'll also say that
yes.
I appreciate that, because I kind of felt like this song specifically was maybe not going to get as much recognition because it wasn't going to be a single, and it's not the last song, so it's not like the outro.
Right.
So I was a little bit like nervous that people wouldn't hear it, because for me, I felt like it was one of my favorite songs on the EP too, honestly. So I appreciate you guys saying that, and I think it's great that you chose this as the outro. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And without any further ado, that song is Jenny's Car. Thanks so much for listening, folks.
Thank you.
Watching if you're watching, and we'll be back soon enough. Go find Jay Feelbender's work anywhere you can stream, and if you want to support even extra hard, you can go to his Bandcamp as well at Jay Feelbender. So thanks so much, folks. We'll catch you next time.
You spent some time in Jenny's car, waste your life trying to be a star. You're kinda scared